The rain had already been pouring for hours, one of those heavy, unbroken storms that makes the whole world feel smaller and quieter. Streets glistened under the flashing streetlights, drains overflowed, and the distant rumble of thunder kept reminding everyone that the worst wasn't over yet. But no one knew that in the middle of this storm, hidden beneath the rushing water and roaring wind, a tiny life was fighting to survive. It started with a faint sound, so soft that most people would have missed it completely. Yet it was a small, trembling cry that changed everything. Amir, a local shopkeeper, was closing up early because the water level outside his store was rising fast. As he pulled down the shutter, he froze. At first, he thought it was just the creaking of a loose metal sheet or the wind twisting through a drain. But then he heard it again, an unmistakable whimper. A dog's cry, weak, afraid, drowning beneath the noise of the storm. He stepped into the rain, letting it soak through his clothes as he tried to follow the sound. The storm was fierce, the kind that pushes people indoors and makes them forget the world outside. But this single sound pulled him deeper into the flooded street. The cries led him to a drain opening near the corner of the block, where muddy water rushed past with frightening speed. Amir knelt down, squinting through the dark, trying to see what was beneath the surface. Then, just for a moment, he saw it, a pair of terrified eyes reflecting back at him. A dog was trapped inside the drain, its body half submerged, unable to climb out as the water continued to rise. Amir's heart sank. The dog wasn't just stuck, it was running out of time. He immediately called the local rescue volunteers, a small group known in the area for helping animals during storms and disasters. They weren't professionals. They didn't have fancy equipment or uniforms. They were just people with huge hearts who refused to look away when something needed help. Within minutes, 3 of them arrived. Sarah, who had rescued dozens of animals over the years, Bilal, strong but gentle, and young Horace, who had recently joined after saving a wounded puppy on the roadside. All of them stared at the drain, hearing the distressed echoes coming from inside, and realized the situation was worse than Amir described. The storm was getting stronger. Water from nearby streets was flowing straight into the drain, and if they didn't act fast, the dog's chances of survival would shrink with every passing second. But reaching the animal wouldn't be easy. The drain cover was jammed tightly, and the main opening was too narrow for a person to climb through without risking being pulled into the current. The rescuers exchanged worried glances. They had done difficult rescues before, but this one felt different. The dog's cries were fading, and the sound hit them straight in the heart. Sarah leaned close, calling softly into the darkness, trying to assure the frightened animal that help had arrived. The little whimper that came back was so faint, so broken, that she had to swallow hard to stop her voice from shaking. They didn't know how long the dog had been trapped there or how much strength it still had left. Bilal tried lifting the drain cover using a metal rod he found nearby, but the iron was slippery and rusted, refusing to budge. Every attempt sent sparks of frustration into the air, and every failed try made the dog's cries feel even more desperate. The water level continued to rise. Within minutes, the small ledge the dog was clinging to would disappear completely. Horace, seeing the panic growing inside the drain, knelt on the ground and pressed his ear close. He could hear the storm water crashing against the walls, hear the dog's breathing, fast, uneven, filled with fear. And then something else, a faint scraping sound, something that didn't fit, something that made him pull back with wide eyes. He wasn't sure whether he imagined it. It was too strange, too unexpected. He looked at Sarah, unsure whether to say anything, but before he could speak, the dog whimpered again, louder this time, as if begging them not to waste another second. That was enough to push them back into action. They decided to break the cover. It was risky, but the only option left. Bilal grabbed another metal rod from a nearby construction site. Amir stood by with a flashlight, his hands shaking as he tried to keep the beam steady. Sarah whispered quick instructions, planning each person's position so no one would fall into the rushing water. Horace held onto the rod tightly, his palms sweating, the strange sound he heard still lingering in his mind. What was it? Was the dog scratching? Was something else moving down there? He couldn't tell, but whatever it was, it didn't feel normal. They worked together, striking the cover repeatedly. Each hit echoed through the empty street. The storm drowned out most sounds, but the metallic clang cut through everything. After what felt like forever, the cover loosened slightly. Bilal took a deep breath, preparing for another strike, one powerful enough to break it open completely. But just then the dog's cry changed. It wasn't a whimper anymore. It was a sharp, terrified yelp that made all of them freeze. Something had happened inside the drain. Sarah immediately lay flat on the ground, shining the flashlight deeper than before. The beam trembled as she tried to locate the dog. She expected to see it exactly where it was moments ago, but the space looked darker, emptier, as if the dog had slipped further down. The thought sent a chill through her. Had the water pushed it? Had it lost its grip? Or was something else moving in the drain? The storm roared louder, almost as if urging them to hurry. Amir stepped closer, asking if she could still see the dog. Sarah didn't answer. She kept staring, her eyes narrowing as she tried to make sense of a faint shape shifting inside the water. It wasn't the dog. It wasn't debris. It was something else, something partially hidden, but definitely there. She pulled back, breathless, and whispered, "There's something else in there." The rescuers exchanged tense looks. None of them knew what she meant. Horace leaned forward to check for himself, gripping the flashlight with unsteady hands. When the light touched the water again, something flickered beneath the surface, something that shouldn't have been there during a simple rescue. The dog cried again, this time sounding farther away, weaker, as if it was slipping into a place where they might not reach it in time. The storm intensified, wind whipping around them, rain pounding harder, the drain filling dangerously fast. Whatever was down there, whatever they were about to uncover, they realized this rescue wouldn't be like any they had attempted before. And as they prepared for their next move, none of them knew that what they were about to discover would leave every single one of them in tears. But before they could even make their next attempt, the drain suddenly went silent. For a moment, no one moved. The sudden silence from the drain felt heavier than the storm itself, almost as if the whole street was holding its breath. The rescuers looked at one another, each of them trying to understand what had just happened. A moment ago, the dog's cries were echoing through the rushing water, fearful, desperate, alive. And now, nothing, not a single sound. The shift was so sharp it made the hair on Sarah's arm stand up. Horace leaned closer, his heart pounding. He tried to tell himself that maybe the dog had simply moved to a deeper ledge. Maybe it was just trying to catch its breath. But deep down, he knew the silence didn't feel normal. This wasn't the kind of quiet that meant safety. It was the kind that creeps into your mind and refuses to let go. He flashed the light again, sweeping it slowly inside the drain, hoping to catch a glimpse of movement. Instead, all he saw was the water churning, splashing against the concrete walls, growing higher by the minute. Bilal slowly stood up, wiping the rain from his face. "We have to move fast," he said, trying to sound steady even though worry was tightening his voice. If the dog slipped deeper, it might be stuck under something. The water pressure is getting worse. Sarah nodded, though her eyes stayed glued to the drain. She couldn't shake the image she had seen moments earlier, the faint shape that wasn't the dog, the shadow that moved in a slow, unsettling way. She didn't know whether it was debris washed in by the storm or something else caught downstream. But whatever it was, it didn't belong there. And if it was blocking the dog's escape, the situation was more dangerous than she wanted to admit. Amir, shivering in the rain, cleared his throat. "I heard stories once," he said hesitantly, "about this drain. People said during floods, strange things get pulled into these tunnels. Old trash, broken furniture, animals, sometimes worse. The water drags everything from the upper town straight through here." Sarah didn't want to think about that. It was true. The drainage system stretched for miles beneath the city, connecting to places no one ever really saw. Things got trapped there all the time. But hearing it out loud made the knot in her stomach tighten even more. "It doesn't matter what's in there," she said softly. "What matters is getting the dog out before the water gets any higher." Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the flooded street in a ghostly flash. For a split second, the entire area looked like another world, silent, empty, drowned under the storm's fury. Then darkness swallowed everything again. Bilal stepped forward and tried the cover once more, putting all his strength into it. The metal groaned, but didn't lift enough to pull aside. It was clear they needed something stronger. He turned to Amir. "You have anything heavy in the shop? A crowbar? Big hammer?" Amir shook his head, apologetic and anxious. "Most things are packed up," but he looked toward the small storage shed behind his store. There might be tools in there, old ones, but maybe something could work. Without waiting, Bilal ran through the knee-deep water toward the shed, Horace following right behind him. Sarah stayed near the drain, lowering herself once again to listen. She pressed her ear close, straining to catch even the faintest sound. At first, she heard nothing but rushing water, then something faint. Not a cry, not a splash, more like a gentle tapping. She pulled back slightly, her heart skipping. The tapping came again, irregular, soft, but real. She called out to the dog, her voice trembling. "We're still here. Just make a sound if you can hear me." Her words disappeared into the storm. She waited. She hoped. But no cry followed. Only more tapping, slow and distant. She wasn't sure whether that was a good sign or a bad one. A few seconds later, Bilal and Horace returned carrying an old rusted crowbar, a hammer, and a long metal pipe. None of them looked new, but all of them looked like they could break something if they needed to. Bilal didn't hesitate. He slid the crowbar into the narrow gap between the cover and the concrete, grunted, and pushed with everything he had. Horace helped, bracing the other side, while Sarah held the flashlight steady. The storm didn't let up. In fact, the rain grew heavier, turning the road into a rushing channel. Water swirled around their ankles, pushing debris across the street. Every few seconds, the drain beneath them gurgled louder, as if the pressure inside was building dangerously. The crowbar finally budged the cover, just a little, enough that Bilal's eyes lit up with hope. "Again," he said, and together they pushed harder. The metal screeched, grinding against the concrete. Inch by inch, the drain cover lifted, creating a gap just wide enough for them to see more inside. Sarah leaned down immediately, shining the flashlight through the opening. The beam cut through the darkness and revealed the swirling water rushing along the tunnel walls. But the dog, where was it? She searched every corner she could see, desperate to find the frightened eyes she'd seen earlier. Then she gasped. Down in the corner, partially hidden behind a chunk of broken pipe, she saw something, a small tuft of soaked fur. The dog. It wasn't moving much, just huddled against the wall, like it was trying to stay above the water. But it was still there, still alive. Sarah's voice broke with relief. "I see it. It's still there." But her relief disappeared just as quickly when she shifted the flashlight and saw something else. Something floating near the dog. It wasn't debris. It looked like a torn piece of cloth, tangled around something that seemed stuck beneath the water's surface. Whatever it was preventing the dog from climbing higher. The cloth shifted slightly, and Sarah realized it was pulled tight, almost like it was snagged on something deeper down the tunnel. The mystery inside the drain grew darker. "What is that?" Horace whispered, leaning closer. "I don't know," Sarah murmured, "but it's blocking the dog." Bilal's jaw tightened as he examined the gap in the drain cover. It was still too narrow to reach through. They needed it fully removed. But the more they lifted it, the more the water poured down the opening, rushing with dangerous force. If they opened it too fast, the sudden flow might push the dog even deeper, maybe into a place they couldn't reach at all. They had to be careful, but they also had to be quick. Horace looked around helplessly. The storm's getting worse. If the water rises any more, that dog won't have a place to hold on. "We're getting it out," Bilal said firmly, though fear trembled beneath his tone. Amir stood nearby, watching the drain with wide, worried eyes. And then he said something none of them expected. What if that cloth is hiding something?" Sarah looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "There's been flooding all morning," he said slowly. People said things were swept away from the higher streets, bags, furniture, even storage crates. What if something got trapped farther inside? Something big enough to pull things down with it? The idea sent a shiver through all of them. Because now, the silence in the drain didn't feel like fear alone. It felt like a warning. Before they could say anything else, a sudden splash echoed from inside the tunnel. A sharp, unpredictable sound, like something shifting below the water, something heavy. Sarah jerked back. Horace dropped the flashlight for a moment. Bilal tightened his grip on the crowbar. And then, from the darkness, the dog finally made another sound. Not a cry, not a whimper, but a low, trembling groan, as if it wasn't just scared, but reacting to something right next to it. The rescuers froze, every nerve on edge. The storm thundered overhead, the drain roared beneath them. And in that suffocating mix of rain and fear, they realized the rescue wasn't just dangerous. It was about to reveal something none of them were prepared for. And whatever was inside that tunnel, the water wasn't the only thing rising. The moment the dog's trembling groan echoed from inside the drain, something shifted between all of them. It was no longer just a rescue. It felt like a race against something they didn't fully understand. The storm kept pounding the street, turning the water darker, faster, and more aggressive. Lightning flashed again, lighting up their faces, worried, determined, and unsure what lay beyond the shadows inside that tunnel. Sarah lowered herself closer to the opening, the flashlight trembling in her hand. She forced herself to breathe slowly as she swept the beam across the tunnel. The dog was still pressed against the wall, shaking, but something else caught her eye, a faint shape moving deeper down the channel. It didn't move like a person or another animal. It drifted, slipped, almost floated with the current, too slow for debris, but too steady for something lifeless. She frowned. "Do you see that?" Bilal leaned in, squinting into the darkness. "I see something, but I can't tell what it is." Horace shuddered. What if it's a broken crate? Or maybe the cloth is tied to it. Something big must be stuck down there for the water to be swirling like that. But Sarah didn't answer. She wasn't convinced it was just debris. There was something odd about how it moved, something almost intentional, not in a threatening way, but in a way that felt wrong for a storm drain. They needed more context. While Bilal worked at loosening the rest of the drain cover, Amir stepped back, feeling the weight of the moment. He remembered something from long ago, before the rescue team even existed. A story his grandfather told him when he was a child, about the old, unused drainage tunnels beneath the city. Back then, the system wasn't as modern as now. Some tunnels connected to abandoned construction sites or old storage paths. During heavy storms, strange things would get pulled into those forgotten spaces. Some people said things stayed trapped down there for years. He hesitated, unsure if he should say anything. It sounded like superstition, and he didn't want to make things worse. But the uneasy feeling in his chest wouldn't go away. "There's something you all should know," he finally said. "These drains, some of them connect to old tunnels from before the renovation. No one uses them anymore, but they're still there. People don't talk about them because they're dangerous." Bilal paused mid-lift. "Dangerous how?" "Deep, narrow, and unpredictable," Amir said. "If something gets trapped in those tunnels, the water pushes into places where no one can reach. There have been stories, things stuck, things lost. People even said they heard strange noises during storms, but no one ever checked." The air grew colder. Even the storm seemed quieter for a second. Sarah exchanged a look with Horace, both of them uneasily connecting the dots. If the dog had been pulled near one of those old tunnel openings, that meant the rescue would be even harder. And that floating shape, whatever it was, might be coming from a deeper, older part of the system. Horace swallowed. Then that means the dog might be blocking the entrance to one of those tunnels. Or trapped right beside one. Amir added quietly. The idea made Sarah's hands tremble harder. If the dog slipped into an old tunnel, its chances of survival would drop to almost nothing. They couldn't let that happen. Bilal finally raised the cover a few more inches, enough for him to wedge the pipe underneath, so it wouldn't fall back down. The opening was bigger now, but water rushed into it more violently too, swirling into the tunnel like a vortex. "We can't open it fully," he warned. "The force is too strong. It'll flood the tunnel faster." "So what do we do?" Sarah asked. "We need another way in," Horace said suddenly. Maybe another access point. Amir nodded quickly. There's a maintenance entrance at the end of the street. It leads to the same drainage path. The moment he said it, hope flickered across their faces. But Amir added, it's locked and old, and the path is slippery. That's better than waiting here, Bilal said, grabbing the flashlight. If we get inside from the other end, we can reach the dog without opening this cover any further. Sarah stared back at the drain. The dog was getting weaker. Its head dipped dangerously close to the rushing water. They didn't have much time. Go, she told the others. But I'm staying here. I'll keep an eye on the dog and call out if anything changes. You sure? Bilal asked. She nodded. If the dog slips, I'll see it first. Just hurry. With no time to waste, Bilal, Horace, and Amir ran to the flooded street, splashing through the rising water toward the maintenance entrance. The storm showed no mercy. Wine slapped against their faces, and the rain soaked them instantly. Every step felt heavier, slower, but they kept going. Back at the drain, Sarah stayed alone. She crouched beside the opening, whispering comforting words, even though she wasn't sure the dog could hear her. Her flashlight beam danced softly across the tunnel, and every shift in the shadows made her heart jump. After a moment, the tapping sound returned. It came from deeper inside the drain again, but this time it was louder, more rhythmic. Not frantic, not random, almost like a signal. She froze, listening closely. The sound echoed lightly through the water, tapping against concrete. Once, twice, then silence. Then again, her pulse quickened. Hello? She whispered. Even though she knew no one would answer, the tapping repeated, slower this time, but unmistakably patterned. She pulled the flashlight back inside, searching for source. Was it the dog kicking something? Was debris knocking against the wall? Or was it coming from farther in the tunnel? As the light flickered across the water, she saw movement again, the floating shape drifting backward, as if it were caught on something. Then it jerked forward an inch, like something beneath it had pulled. Sarah's throat tightened. She kept the beam steady, and the shape moved again, not with the current, but against it. She gasped and stumbled back slightly, nearly dropping the flashlight, because whatever was moving inside, that tunnel wasn't being pushed by the water. It was pulling itself, slowly, heavily, closer to where the dog was trapped. Her breath hitched. The storm thundered loudly above her. And inside the drain, something scraped against the wall with a deep, dragging sound. Sarah's voice trembled as she called out to the dog, to the others, to anyone who could hear. But her voice vanished into the storm. Far down the street, Bilal and Horace reached the maintenance entrance. The gate was old, rusted, and covered in vines swept down by the rain. They pulled, pushed, kicked. It barely rattled. The lock was corroded shut. Horace looked around desperately. We need something to break it. Bilal scanned the street, spotting a heavy rock lodged near the sidewalk. He grabbed it and slammed it against the lock. Once, twice, again. Sparks flew. The lock trembled but didn't break. Rainwater dripped into their eyes, blurring their vision. They were soaked, exhausted, but they kept going. Sarah's voice rang faintly from the distance, calling out again. Bilal paused. Did you hear that? Horace nodded. She sounded scared. Bilal hit the lock again, harder this time. It cracked. One more strike. Finally, it snapped open. They rushed inside, the narrow tunnel stretching into darkness. Meanwhile, Sarah leaned closer to the drain, her voice barely holding steady. She didn't dare shine the flashlight again, not after what she'd seen, but she couldn't look away either. She listened to the water, the tapping, the scraping, the soft groans of the scared dog. Then suddenly, a new sound emerged. A slow, heavy exhale, not from the dog, not from the storm, from something deeper, hidden just beyond the shadows. Sarah's heart pounded. The dog whimpered weakly. And as she leaned closer, afraid to move but more afraid to look away, she finally realized they weren't alone inside that drain. And whatever was waiting in the darkness was getting closer. Sarah didn't dare move. The sound inside the drain had changed again, no longer a simple scrape or a soft tap. This time it carried weight, like a breath pushed from something large, hidden just beyond the dim circle of her flashlight. The dog let out a faint whine, barely audible over the storm, and pressed itself even harder against the wall, as if trying to disappear into the concrete. Sarah swallowed hard, trying to speak even though her throat was tight. "It's okay, stay with me. We're here, we're getting you out." But the wind stole her words, and deep inside the drain, something exhaled again. Slow, heavy, almost curious. Far down the street, Bilal and Horace hurried to the narrow maintenance tunnel, their flashlights cutting sharp paths through the darkness. The water inside the tunnel was ankle-deep and moving fast. The walls dripped constantly, and every echo sounded like something following them. The air was thick, humid, and carried a faint smell of mud and rust. "This leads to the same drain," Amir whispered nervously behind them. "But it splits somewhere. I can't remember where." Horace looked over his shoulder, trying to keep his fear from showing. "We'll figure it out when we get there. Just keep moving." Back at the drain, Sarah forced herself to lean forward again. The dog's eyes reflected the faint light, filled with fear but still determined to hold on. She couldn't let herself panic. Not now. She had to keep talking, keep the dog focused. But before she could speak again, the floating shape inside the tunnel shifted sharply. It jerked toward the dog, pushed not by the current but pulled, as if something underneath had tightened its grip. Sarah gasped and shined the light instinctively. The beam hit the shape, what looked like a tangled bundle of cloth wrapped around a long piece of broken wood. But then, beneath the surface, something else moved. A shadow, a bulge. Something alive? Something trapped? Something pulling the debris backward, dragging it deeper into the tunnel before releasing it again. What was it? Her heart pounded in her chest. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but whatever it was big enough to move debris without the current's help, big enough to disturb the dog, big enough to make that sound. Thunder exploded overhead, shaking the ground. The water surged, splashing higher against the concrete edges of the drain. "Sarah, can you hear us?" Bilal's voice echoed faintly from somewhere behind the metal walls. She stood up quickly, relief breaking through the fear. "Yes, I'm here. The dog is still alive. Please hurry." The echoes of their footsteps bounced closer and closer inside the maintenance tunnel, but the storm was too loud to tell how far away they really were. Meanwhile, inside the drain, the tapping began again, faster this time, louder, like something trying to communicate or warn. Sarah turned to the opening, gripping the flashlight so tightly her knuckles whitened. She didn't want to shine the light again, didn't want to see something she wasn't ready for, but she had to keep watching the dog. She forced the beam downward. This time, the dog wasn't looking at her. It was staring deeper into the tunnel, its body trembling violently, ears pinned back, eyes fixed on the darkness. Whatever the dog saw, she couldn't. Not yet. But the way the dog stared, silent, rigid, terrified, made her step back. The scraping returned, louder, closer. In the maintenance tunnel, Bilal picked up speed. "We're close. I can hear the water rushing from the main drain." Amir clutched his flashlight tightly, shadows stretching across his face. "We need to get to the dog before the tunnel floods. It's rising faster than before." The three of them splashed through a curve in the tunnel, the water hitting their legs harder as the elevation dipped. The sound grew louder. The main drain was just ahead. But then they stopped. The tunnel split. A fork. Two paths. Both dark. Both echoing with rushing water. Horace swore under his breath. "Which way?" Amir looked around helplessly. I don't know. I can't remember. Everything looks different when it's flooded." Bilal closed his eyes, listening carefully. One tunnel carried a deep, steady roar, strong, fast-moving water. The other carried a softer, uneven rhythm, something like tapping. His heartbeat quickened. "This one," he said, pointing right. "The dog made that tapping sound earlier. It must be echoing from this path." They hurried into the right tunnel. Back at the drain, the dog suddenly slipped lower as the water rose. Sarah dropped her hands immediately, reaching toward the opening even though she couldn't reach the dog yet. "Hold on, little one. Hold on. We're coming." But then the breathing sound inside the tunnel grew stronger, closer. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. She could hear it now, something dragging itself slowly through the water. Not aggressive, not rushing, just steadily moving, the way something trapped might move, or something injured, a mix of fear and empathy twisted inside her. What if whatever was in the drain wasn't dangerous? What if it was trapped too? What if the dog wasn't alone in its suffering? But she didn't have time to explore that thought, because in the next second, the dog's hind leg slipped deeper, and it let out a sharp, helpless scream. "No!" Sarah shouted, grabbing the metal edge of the drain. "Hold on." At that exact moment, Bilal, Horace, and Amir reached a metal grate inside the tunnel. Through the bars, they saw the rushing water on the other side, and faintly, they could hear Sarah yelling, "This is it." Horace said, grabbing the grate, "This is the drain." But the grate wouldn't move. It was rusted and sealed from years of neglect. Back above, Sarah leaned in, hearing the dog fighting to pull itself back onto the ledge. The poor creature's claws scraped desperately against the wet concrete. One wrong push in the water, and it would be swept into the deeper tunnels. "Stay with me. Stay with me," Sarah whispered, tears mixing with the rain. Inside the tunnel, Bilal braced himself and slammed the metal grate with all his strength. It groaned, bending slightly. Horace joined him, hitting it again and again. Water splashed into their faces, and the ground shook with each strike. The tapping started again, this time echoing from both ends of the tunnel. Sarah froze. So did Bilal. Horace's eyes widened. Something was moving in the water between them. Sarah forced herself to shine the light one more time. The beam hit the water. The dog was still clinging to the ledge, but behind it, something shifted deeper in the tunnel. A shape, a movement, large, slow, rising. Sarah's breath caught. Bilal heard her gasp from the other side. The storm roared above them. The water surged dangerously, and all the sounds collided together, scraping, rushing, tapping, groaning, until it was impossible to tell where any of it came from. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The dog slipped again, its body sliding dangerously close to the swirling water. Something moved behind it. The grate inside the tunnel finally cracked, a bolt snapping loose. And in that exact moment, as both teams reached for the same desperate goal, the entire drain shook, and something inside it began to rise toward the light. The drain shook violently, and the water roared like a beast awakening. Sarah stumbled backward, gripping the metal edge with all her strength. Her flashlight flickered in the storm, casting wild shadows across the tunnel. And for a moment, she couldn't even see the dog. The poor animal's frantic eyes reflected the dim light, and it let out a whimper that cut straight through her chest. Then she saw it, the shape beneath the water, the one that had been moving slowly, almost deliberately, surfaced, not fully, but enough to reveal that it wasn't debris, not a crate, not even part of the drainage system. It was alive. Its size dwarfed the dog, its body slick and glistening from the water, and Sarah realized with a jolt that the dog hadn't been alone in its struggle. Something else had been trapped in the drain with it all along. Her heart raced. "Oh my God! No, no, no," she whispered. The creature moved again, partially blocking the dog from climbing out. It didn't attack, not yet, but the water swirling around it created a force strong enough to push the dog further into danger. Sarah's mind raced. How could this be happening? The dog was already fighting to survive, and now there was something else, unknown, between it and safety. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the side street. Bilal and Horace had finally forced open the maintenance entrance. Water rushed past their boots as they sprinted to the tunnel, flashlights cutting through darkness filled with echoes of dripping water and the storm above. "Sarah!" Bilal yelled. "Where is it?" "There, near the drain." Sarah shouted back, pointing toward the opening. Her voice trembled. "But there's something in the water, something big." The moment Bilal saw the shape, he froze. Horace gasped. Both of them had expected debris, maybe a branch or a crate, but this This was something alive, something that didn't belong in the storm drain. "Stay calm," Bilal shouted, though his own voice shook. "We have to get to the dog first. Whatever that is, we deal with it after." Sarah nodded, gripping the edge as the dog struggled, slipping against the rising water. The water surged again, stronger this time, and the dog's small body was nearly swept under. Sarah's heart leapt in panic. "Hold on," she screamed. Then came the second twist, something no one expected. As Bilal and Horace pushed further down the tunnel toward the drain, they noticed the water wasn't just rushing from the storm anymore. A secondary current pulled from another direction. A sudden surge from one of the old abandoned branches of the drainage system Amir had mentioned. It was moving fast, carrying debris, muddy water, and something else. A shadow darted through the current, faster than the dog could move, faster than the water should allow. Sarah's blood ran cold. "It's coming toward us." The dog yelped, sensing the shift in the water. It tried to scramble backward, but hit the wall, slipping again. Sarah's hand shot out instinctively, trying to reach it, but she couldn't get close enough. Bilal lunged, grabbing the dog just as another wave surged. The animal's paws slipped, claws scratching against the jacket, eyes wide with terror. Horace shouted, trying to hold a flashlight steady to illuminate the water, but the strange creature was moving too. Whatever had been hidden beneath the tunnel was now coming closer to the dog and to them, cutting off the only path to safety. Amir's voice echoed from behind, desperate. "It's not just a storm. There's something else in the tunnel. Something alive." Sarah realized the second plot twist wasn't just a creature. It was a flood itself. The storm water and the currents were working together in a deadly combination, pinning the dog between natural forces and something unknown. Every second the water rose. Every second the creature moved closer, the stakes became higher. The dog whimpered again, pressed against Bilal's chest, trying to squirm free, as Sarah leaned closer, trying to keep the animal calm. "We're almost there," she whispered, though her voice wavered. "Just a little longer." The unknown creature shifted again, just beneath the surface. For a split second, the water's reflection caught Sarah's eye, glossy, wet, and with something glinting like an eye staring directly at her. She stumbled back, gasping. "It's watching us!" she yelled. Bilal froze mid-step, realizing the currents weren't random. The creature wasn't just trapped. It was aware. It moved with purpose, blocking the dog's escape, guiding the water in a way that made the rescue harder. It wasn't attacking yet, but it was controlling the environment around them. Horace's flashlight shook as he followed the movement. It's clever," he whispered. "It's trying to trap us." Sarah's mind raced. How could an animal be this smart? What was it? And why had it been hidden in the drain all this time? Every story Amir had told about old tunnels, every warning about strange noises and missing items, suddenly made sense. But the reality was far worse than any of them could have imagined. The storm raged harder, water rising above their ankles, threatening to sweep away the dog again. Sarah's arms shook as she reached for it once more. The dog trembled violently, yelping as the currents pulled at its small body, and behind it, the shape shifted, gliding closer with the water, deliberately narrowing the space between them. Bilal and Horace were now at the edge of the drain, struggling to get inside safely without being swept off their feet. The maintenance tunnel offered only a narrow approach, and the water churned violently around them. Every step was a risk. Every second the dog remained trapped increased the danger. Sarah's voice broke as she whispered to the dog, "You have to hold on just a little longer." Lightning flashed, illuminating the tunnel in stark white. The creature was almost fully visible now, its dark body slick against the water, limbs or appendages pushing and guiding debris with purpose. The dog's eyes were wide with terror. Sarah's hand shook. Bilal's boots slipped in the water, and Horace's flashlight beam danced wildly, revealing fleeting glimpses of the strange figure. And then, over the roar of the storm, came a sound that froze them all, a low, rumbling growl, muffled by water but unmistakably alive, coming from beneath the drain. The storm, the currents, the trapped dog, and the creature, it was all converging. Sarah's mind raced, adrenaline pumping. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was survival. And the second twist, the creature, the currents, the unknown force, had escalated everything. The dog yelped again, slipping toward the deeper drain, and Sarah lunged instinctively, screaming the only thing she could, "Hold on!" And in that exact moment, the water surged violently from the unknown branch of the tunnel. The creature moved closer, and the dog teetered on the edge of disappearing into the darkness below. The storm had pushed them to the limit. Every decision, every movement, every heartbeat now mattered, and whatever waited in the shadows of that flooded drain was about to make the next move. Sarah's heart pounded as the water surged again, threatening to sweep the dog into the deeper, darker tunnels. She leaned over the edge, reaching with every ounce of strength she had. Bilal and Horace were at the maintenance tunnel entrance, bracing themselves against the force of the water, their flashlights cutting through the storm's chaos. The dog's tiny body trembled violently in Sarah's hands, and for a moment, it seemed impossible that they could hold on against the currents, the unknown creature, and the rising water. Then, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the drain fully. The creature beneath the water was there, glistening and immense. But something changed. The moment it realized they were acting together, it stopped moving forward. It floated just beneath the surface, watching, almost hesitant. Sarah's mind raced. Was it intelligent? Was it scared? Or had it simply been trapped and defensive all along? "Now, Sarah!" Bilal shouted, sloshing through the flooded street toward her. With Horace's help, they grabbed the edges of the dog, pulling it safely toward Sarah. Together, they lifted the dog out of the drain, shielding it from the surging water. The animal shook violently, but it was alive, its fur soaked and matted, eyes wide with fear, but safe. Sarah clutched the dog to her chest, tears streaming down her face as she whispered soothing words. "You're safe now, you're safe." Bilal and Horace leaned against the edge, gasping from exhaustion, relief washing over them as the storm seemed to pause for just a heartbeat. But then, the water surged once more, and the creature beneath the surface reacted. It shifted slightly, and Sarah froze. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe, convinced it was going to lash out. But then, slowly, almost reluctantly, it sank back down into the depths of the drain, vanishing beneath the murky water. Amir, who had stayed back to coordinate, finally reached them. It just let the dog go," he said, disbelief in his voice. "Whatever that thing is, it didn't want to hurt it." Sarah held the dog tightly, still shaking, trying to process what just happened. "It wasn't attacking," she said softly, realizing the truth. "It was scared. Trapped, just like the dog." Bilal nodded, still panting. "We were too focused on rescuing the dog to see it for what it really was." For a moment, there was silence, just the storm's rain hitting the streets and the soft whines of the small dog in Sarah's arms. Relief washed over him like a wave, heavy and overwhelming. The dog licked Sarah's face, finally relaxing, its trembling slowing. Then came the final, unexpected twist. As they turned to leave the drain, Horace's flashlight flicked across the concrete wall and caught something glinting. Sarah stepped closer and saw it. A small collar caught on a jagged piece of metal, half submerged in the water. The collar wasn't the dog's. It had a tiny tag, engraved with a name and a phone number. Sarah read it aloud, her voice shaking. "Bella?" Bilal looked over. "That must be to another dog." Amir frowned. Could there be more trapped down there? The storm was still raging, the water slowly beginning to recede, but the drain stretched endlessly into darkness. Whatever the creature was, whatever had survived alongside the dog, it had been hiding something else, something they hadn't seen yet. Sarah held the rescued dog tighter, heart racing again. "We saved one," she whispered, "but there might be another, and we have to find it." The wind howled through the empty streets, echoing off the concrete. The storm had passed in part, but the danger and the mystery was far from over. Even as the dog rested safely in Sarah's arms, something stirred beneath the surface of the water, barely visible, almost playful, before vanishing into the shadows of the drain once more. And with that, the rescuers realized that the story wasn't truly over. The storm had revealed one life saved, but it had also uncovered secrets hiding in the darkness, Secrets that might only be revealed when they dare to go back into flooded tunnels again. The dog whimpered softly, safer now, unaware that its near-death experience had only uncovered a larger, deeper mystery waiting below the city streets. Sarah looked down at the small creature, her hands trembling, and whispered, "We'll come back. I promise." The storm raged above, the drain bubbled quietly, and somewhere in the shadows, the creature watched. Not threatening, not aggressive, just waiting, hidden, knowing the story wasn't finished. And for the rescuers, the realization hit them all at once. Sometimes saving one life only uncovers the beginning of a much bigger challenge. The dog had survived the storm, but the secrets of the flooded drain were far from over. The rain began to ease, though the sky was still thick with dark clouds, and the streets glistened under the dim glow of the remaining streetlights. Sarah held the small dog close, feeling its warm body tremble against her chest. Its name didn't matter yet. All that mattered was that it had survived. Bilal and Horace leaned against the edge of the drain, drenched and exhausted, their faces streaked with mud and rainwater, but relief shone clearly in their eyes. Amir stepped closer, glancing down at the murky water, still cautious about what might remain hidden in the shadows of the drain. "We were lucky," he said quietly. "It's not just a dog. That thing in the drain, it didn't attack. It was just scared like the dog. Maybe it's been trapped in there for a long time." Sarah nodded, hugging the dog tighter. "I think you're right. We were so focused on rescuing the dog that we didn't see it for what it was. Not a threat, just lost." The small dog, still shivering, licked Sarah's hand. Its eyes, wide with fear only minutes before, now looked curious and trusting. She whispered softly, "You're safe now. I promise." Bilal shook his head, still trying to process everything. "I can't believe it. That creature, whatever it was huge, and yet it didn't try to hurt us. It just let the dog go. Incredible." Horace crouched beside Sarah, gently patting the dog. "Do you think there could be more trapped down there? That collar we saw, maybe there are other animals?" Amir glanced back at the tunnel and sighed. "It's possible. The storm could have swept other animals into the old drainage tunnels. But we'll deal with that when it happens. Today we saved one life. That's enough for now." Sarah looked at the dog again. "Yes, today we saved one life. But we learned something too. Not everything dangerous is evil. Some things are just scared and need help." She paused, watching the storm waters slowly recede. Even in a storm, even in places that seem dark and hopeless, there's still a chance to make a difference. The team slowly made their way out of the flooded street, carrying the dog safely. Neighbors and onlookers had begun to emerge from their homes, drawn by the news of the rescue. They had watched from a distance as the storm raged and wondered what was happening inside that drain. Now, they saw the small dog safe in Sarah's arms, and a wave of relief and gratitude washed over them. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Khan, approached Sarah cautiously. "You saved that little one?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I saw the water. I thought it was impossible." Sarah smiled faintly, still catching her breath. "It wasn't easy, but we did it. It's safe now." Mrs. Khan nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You've done something amazing today." "Thank you." Bilal and Horace exchanged tired smiles. "We couldn't have done it without Sarah," Bilal said. "She kept the dog calm and focused while we worked on getting it out." The dog, now resting in Sarah's arms, finally began to relax. Its small body stopped trembling, and it let out a soft sigh. Sarah stroked its fur gently. "You're going to be okay now. You're going to find a warm home, food, and people who care about you." Amir looked back at the drain one last time. The water still churned faintly, reflecting the dim light, but the strange creature that had frightened them was gone. He wondered if it had returned to the deeper, older tunnels, or if it had found a way to escape on its own. Whatever the truth, he knew one thing. The storm had revealed something important. Not just about the drainage system, not just about the animals, but about courage, empathy, and the value of life. Sarah glanced at her friends. Today wasn't just about rescuing a dog. It was about seeing beyond fear, understanding what's trapped, and helping whenever you can. That's what matters. Bilal nodded slowly. "And we did that together. Each of us played a role. Without teamwork, we wouldn't have made it. That's a lesson in itself. Horace, still holding the flashlight, looked down at the dog. I think it knows that too. You can see it in its eyes. It trusts us now. The small dog yawned, curling its body against Sarah's chest. Its eyes were soft, calm, and filled with a quiet gratitude that seemed almost human. Sarah smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She had gone into Storm afraid, unsure what they would find, and now she held life in her arms, a life that would live to see another day. As the rescuers and Sarah made their way back toward safer streets, the sky began to clear. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, and the wind was softening. The city, still wet and reflective, looked almost peaceful after the chaos of the storm. People came out of their homes to check on each other, sharing stories of the night, and slowly rebuilding a sense of normalcy. Amir, Sarah, Bilal, and Horace finally stopped at a small, dry patch near the edge of the flooded street. The dog looked up at Sarah, and she whispered, "We'll take you somewhere safe now, somewhere you belong." The team shared a quiet moment of reflection. "This storm taught us more than I thought it would," Bilal said. "It showed us fear, danger, but also hope and bravery. And we realized that even in the darkest, most hopeless places, life can still survive if we act." Horace nodded. "And that's the key, isn't it? Not giving up, not turning away, helping whenever and wherever we can, even when it's scary." Sarah hugged the dog one final time before handing it over to a local animal rescue organization that had arrived to help. Volunteers wrapped it in warm blankets, giving it food and comfort. The dog's tail wagged faintly, the first sign of relaxation after hours of terror. As the team watched the dog being carried to safety, a sense of closure settled over them. The storm had passed. The dog had survived. And though the drain still held secrets, the courage, teamwork, and compassion of the rescuers had made a real difference. Just when it seemed the night's ordeal was over, a soft movement from the remaining water caught Sarah's eye. She froze, shining her flashlight toward the drain one last time. For a split second, a dark silhouette slipped beneath the surface. Faster than the current, it paused, almost as if looking at them, before vanishing completely into the deeper tunnels. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She realized the city's drain still held mysteries, that not everything had been revealed, and that the storm's secrets were far from finished. But for now, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel relief and accomplishment. The dog was safe, and the team had survived. The night was quieting. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. The wind was gentle, and the city slowly returned to life. People would talk about the storm, about the floods, and about the tiny hero they had saved. But Sarah knew the real story. The story of courage, teamwork, and empathy was one that couldn't be told in a headline or a news clip. It was lived, felt, and remembered. And though there were still mysteries lurking in the flooded drains, though unseen creatures might wait in the shadows, Sarah knew one thing: hope could survive even the darkest storms. With that thought, she turned away from the drain, the small dog safe in the care of volunteers, the streets quieting and the storm finally behind them. The night's terror had passed, but its lessons about bravery, compassion, and the unexpected would stay with them forever. The city glistened under the first glimpses of clearing skies, and Sarah, soaked but smiling, whispered softly to herself, "One life saved, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough to make a difference." And somewhere deep beneath the city, in the quiet tunnels of the drained stormwater, shadows shifted silently, waiting for the next storm, the next life, the next chance to reveal their secrets. The night had ended, but the story of courage and survival would continue.